We're gonna get there. Cool. Hi, everyone. This is our podcast. This is the Sauce Podcast, adding
Ooh,
some color and spice to all of our generation's greatest conversations and debates. I'm your host, Josh, and this is my lovely co host.
Janyce.
And we are going to be showcasing our first episode with our lovely other co host, ensemble member of the Counter Collective, Christian Helem. Say hello, Christian.
Hi, y'all.
Welcome to the Sauce. Happy to have you.
I'm so glad to be here.
And so, on this episode, we are going to be talking about beginnings and starting something new. Does that sound familiar to y'all? That's weird because, this is a whole new thing that we're trying. So, we're going to talk about that
Oh, yeah.
and our experience starting stuff from the scratch.
Mhm.
So, we're going to start off with just intros, right? So, Janyce, do you want to start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's up? Who are you?
Yes. Who am I? That's what I'm trying to figure out. My name is Janyce. She, her pronouns. I am a Puerto Rican born and raised in Chicago, Humboldt Park neighborhood, Northwest Side. A little bit about me. I am a theater artist. I'm a teaching artist based here in Chicago and an actor as well, mostly stage, but on screen too. That's cool. Um, yeah, that's a little bit about me. Super passionate about social justice and making sure that theater and all art spaces are truly inclusive. And super excited to be here and getting this project started with everyone.
Super awesome. Christian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Christian. I am from Hyde Park, but I feel like I'm from this entire city. But I'm from Hyde Park, and I'm an artist. I just like to say theater artist because I'm like, I do a lot of things, but
Yeah.
predominantly I love writing, I love directing, and love teaching theater. So, yeah.
Cool.
And how about you, Joshua? Who are you?
Well, hi. My name is Josh. I am 24, going on 25. I'm a Mexican, born and raised on Chicago's Northwest Side. All my Portage Park peeps, what's up? In terms of my art or what I do, I like to call myself an artist generally. In terms of professional work, I mainly do theater and acting and film and TV and stuff like that. However, I do dabble in a bunch of different art forms. I kind of always have. And yeah, that's kind of me. A fun fact about me. I don't know if we were sharing fun facts.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
why
a
not?
super nerd.
How so? Tell us
Anything
how.
you don't want me to, because once I
You got a
start,
long list.
it's gonna get bad. I'm wearing a Game of Thrones shirt. Um, we're not gonna get into that show, but this is not that kind of podcast. I'm just letting people out there know, right?
Okay,
That's who I
fine.
am. I talk a lot. So Janice, if you need to rein me in and just be
I
like, hey,
got you.
cállate, just
I have
feel
no
free to feel
problem.
free to let me know that. Can we go around actually and talk about? We all talked a little bit, I think, about like our cultures, our ethnicities, kind of where we come from, or the locations, neighborhoods that we grew up in. Can we talk about what is our favorite part of either being born and raised in that culture,
Oh.
or just something that we loved about the way that we grew up, or something like that? We'll start with you, Christian.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
is your
Okay, so
favorite part about?
I didn't say I like to tell people I'm like 75, 80% black. I'm predominantly black. Um, and then part Cuban on my mother's side. And, I mean, it's really interesting that you would ask that because it's hard to codify what one of my favorite things is. I just love the entire experience of growing up black, especially on the South Side. It definitely had some drawbacks. I'm not gonna act like it was great, but great all the time. But yeah, I think that my favorite thing from our culture is the art and the contribution to movies, to and art like literature, right, movies, theater, music. I think that
Mm,
that's probably one of my favorite things. And it was a huge part of our family. Like we our family believed in going and seeing music shows, going to the African Fest, which was a big thing in Hyde Park every single year. So
mm.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it was a big part of my upbringing.
That's cool. So would you say that it was more so about like seeing yourself or seeing your culture kind of in the mainstream media that was kind of something that was cool that allowed you and your community to kind of like round up and experience things that you guys all were like thought relatable that you guys knew about? Or
Yeah, I think I would. I think I'd say that. I think that it gives you a sense of pride and understanding in who you are, and a sense
Mm.
of where you came from, right, and where your family comes from, in a different way than just asking necessarily like, where does my grandmother come from, right?
right.
Where does my uncle come from? Those sorts of things are only part of the story, right? It doesn't encapsulate the entire history of your roots and your ancestors and what
Yeah.
got them to where they are. So yeah.
Christian, I've known you for a very long time, and we can like talk about later about how we're connected. I feel
Yeah,
like I've
right.
known you my whole life. But I feel like maybe it's been a couple of times where you've talked to me about your Cuban heritage, but I don't think that's something that comes up often. Like growing up for you, and
Yeah.
maybe this is me just being selfish because I like want to know more about your experience. But like, did you find yourself ever, being exposed to that Cuban side of the family, and how did that affect your upbringing, or was that not so much a part of your experience here in Chicago?
Yeah, so my grandmother was from Cuba. And she came to America in her early 20s, I believe it was. So she came here to America, and started a family. But she died when my mother was young. So I never knew her, right? So I only know about my Cuban heritage through that, But unfortunately, it's never been something that anyone in my family knew enough about, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody was separated in some way, right? Like my grandmother from Cuba married a black man, my grandfather, right? So he
Mhm.
wasn't of Cuban descent, and he was even learning the culture secondhand, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's always the hardest part. Is like I've actually had to dig into it as I've gotten older, right? And
Yeah.
actually ask myself, like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be part Cuban? Like, what is the history of Cuba? Like, you know what I mean? Just the
Yeah.
same way that I've had to dig into like what the history of being black is, and how our experiences got us to where we are. So yeah, yeah.
I think that's really interesting how like when you're part of any diaspora,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right, and like later
Mm-hmm.
generations, trying to make that reconnection to home is, I think, something that's like a journey for each individual, right? Because we have like so many different homes if we look far enough in the past, right, that we all kind of have been a united one. But I think that that's such so cool that you got to see that journey, and especially one that like seems so close
Mm-hmm.
but was like missing, right? I think that that's super cool that you got the opportunity to explore that a little bit.
And
Yeah.
really quickly about to what you just said, Josh.
Yeah.
I think that also when you start to look into your own heritage, right? Like, I'm sure you all have experienced this. You also are in connection to it by how close your family is, right? So
Oh,
if you
absolutely.
come up
Yeah.
in a house
Yeah.
where it's a big part of your upbringing, right? Like it was in my house, right? Like my mom was constantly like telling me stuff like, "Oh, did you know?" So I felt like I knew a lot of facts because they were constantly being thrown at me, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So that's kind of my relationship, you know, is
Yeah.
is through the lens of how my family brought me up.
That makes
Cool.
complete sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's jump off of that. Janyce, how about you? How much did you know about your heritage? Like, what was one of your favorite parts
Oh
about growing up in
man.
Humble Park
I
as
know,
a
right?
Puerto Rican, as a Boricua?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I'm so stereotypical.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't say there. I wouldn't say that, but yeah, okay.
No, yeah, yeah. I love it. I think I grew up very much so surrounded by my culture
Mhm.
and being proud of like where my family came from because I'm born and raised in Chicago. But I when I was 3, I joined my grandmother's dance group which was called Las Semillitas. And it was like a big Puerto Rican folk dancing group that we would like perform in like parades and like different places all around. So like there, I think it was like as soon as I could walk, they like taught me how to, do salsa, merengue, and bachata, bomba, plena, like all of these like traditional Puerto Rican, dances. Like before I could even speak, I was doing those things. So I think that it was really important for my family to be exposed to that side of my culture, the
Mm.
food. I have a really big family. But I think the part of the culture that I missed growing up that I always like every day, not a day goes by that I wish that I didn't have this exposure was I don't speak Spanish fluently. And like definitely going through the Latinx community with that is so heavy on my heart. And like, I always want to get better. And I'm like, I always like, I take some classes here and one-on-one voice or not voice as in Spanish lessons. So it's still definitely a journey because I would love to feel more confident with my Spanish one day. And I'm not giving up on it. It's definitely something that I'm like, I have the chance to learn. But that is a part of my culture that I am not connected to and I wish I was.
Sure. Same, girl. Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. Totally relate to that.
Mhm.
In terms of my background, stuff that happened with me, my mom immigrated from Mexico when she was 18 years old to
Mhm.
Chicago with her family. So there was a very direct connection there to my Mexican heritage.
Yeah.
My dad is half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, but he was born and raised in Chicago. Kind of speaks like he's able to speak Spanish, you know what I'm saying? But it's not, he wasn't as surrounded by, I think, like his heritage in the actual city of Chicago.
Okay.
He was more like a Chicano in that sense of like born and raised with the city, and the city was more his culture than say like being a Mexican or Puerto Rican, except when I think he would go to Puerto Rico like every summer to visit his
Amazing.
grandma.
Mhm.
And he would do that for like a couple weeks and then come back, which is super cool. And that's, I think, how he got his Spanish to be as practical and fluent as he is. Um, but because of that, and because my dad only has one brother in the family, like we don't have a super large family on his side.
Mhm.
They're also lived really far
Mhm.
versus my mom, who had like 10 brothers and sisters, and
Yeah.
3 of them or 4 of them live in Chicago, or at least the Chicagoland area. And so every time someone had a birthday, we would have these massive Mexican parties with like 30, 40 people, a bunch of kids running around.
Oh man,
So
the
like that's
parties.
how I grew up. Yeah. So in terms of my favorite parts about that, about growing up in my culture, I miss that feeling. I miss that feeling so much.
Yeah.
And I know that that's not exclusive, obviously, to Mexican or Puerto Rican culture, but the idea of having just a bunch of family over and having all of this amazing smelling food, because I love food. We're going to be talking about food in a little
Yeah,
bit.
I know,
We're going to be
perfect
talking about food in a
transition.
little bit. But
I
like
love it.
having all of that, even having a piñata and like that, like
Right.
to do all of that was all stuff that I loved growing up doing. Like Janyce, though, I totally wish I got to pick up more Spanish growing up. My parents never hid it from me.
Mhm.
Um, it just because of my mom's work schedule and the fact that my dad was usually also working, or he was deployed in the army back in the day, or National Guard. Never got that practice growing up. So it wasn't until high school where my mom was like, "Hey, Josh, why don't you speak Spanish?" And I was like,
What do you mean?
I
Isn't
You
that
do.
mean
your
why don't
thing?
I?
I guess, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that, but you know
Mhm.
how it is. But yeah, so that's definitely been something that I've been grappling with too, Johnny. It's about like
Yeah.
practice as much with friends. I got Duolingo on my phone, and I'm trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
like, can we get sponsors? Do we have to mention them if we? Okay, never mind. We're
We'll
fine.
bleep it.
We'll bleep it. We'll bleep it out. But that's something that I know that I've struggled with on my journey, especially in acting, which I think is a topic for a whole different
I know. I
podcast.
was like, this alone could be
Languages,
its own episode. So like
absolutely,
everyone just hold
absolutely.
on
Yeah.
because like my
So we're
wheels
gonna
are
talk.
turning now about like
Yeah,
how we
we're
could
gonna.
make this. So just like a brief summary of how we're all connected.
Mhm.
We are all alums from the Chicago High School for the Arts. Christian and I are part of the first graduating class in 2013, and
Yeah,
Josh was right after
don't be
us.
telling the year we graduated,
I know, I'm
Janice. You know, they're
sorry, too
gonna be
much
knowing our
information. We'll
age and
bleep it.
everything.
I already said my age. I already said my age.
Anything we don't like, we'll bleep it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're so excited to come together, and later on we can talk a little bit more about what Counter Collective is when we talking the specifics of, starting something, Chris.
Sure.
But before we do
Absolutely.
that, we were
Oh, I
talking.
also went to Shy Arts and I was in the second graduating class, by
I
the way.
said it. I said it.
Did you?
Did you
I
hear,
thought you said
Christian?
you said you and Christian were
I
in the
said that
first
you
graduating
followed up
class.
after us.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't
Yeah.
forget.
Okay. That's fine. All right, go ahead. It's hard to do that with these. I've been doing that
It's
ironically. I've been doing it ironically, and it's turned into me actually doing it all the time.
What's
and I kinda
funny
hate
is
it.
you've never had hair long enough to just put behind your ear, Josh. Like you've
I
never
can
had.
with this. Do you see this?
Don't do that. Josh is
Okay,
very passionate
You
about his
don't
hair.
know.
Don't do
You
this.
don't
I'm
know.
sorry,
You don't know.
Rapunzel. Let me step back.
All right, Rapunzel. All right. So our next section of our podcast is called Shatty.
That was a little too close to something
Oh,
else,
no,
Janyce.
another
That was a
bleep.
little too close.
Chatty snack. And so for this portion, we're all just going to take a very, very fast go around of a snack of your choosing. So you can describe your favorite snack, maybe just something that you're craving right now. Maybe it was a snack growing up that you would eat all the time. But let's give it to Christian, our reoccurring guest. I'm sorry, there's someone trying to get in my apartment. What your snack is.
Let's see. Ooh, I love a bazillion different snacks. The real question is, am I in the mood for something salty or sweet? Or the moments in my life, they're not super frequent, but when I want something salty and sweet, so I'll go and I'll get like that Chex Mix that's like, or I'll go get the Cheez-It box that has like M&Ms in it too. Anyway, I think one of my all-time favorite snacks forever will be, don't judge me, is a Lunchable. I don't eat them because they have so much salt in them, and I'm trying to be a conscious human being, a conscious adult, but I do love a good Lunchable.
I don't think I've had a Lunchable in years, but I do not blame you for that. That's
Right.
I hold them
Get
with
you
such
one.
fond memory in my heart, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can
absolutely.
automatically like remember what that tastes like. Yeah, I get
Exactly.
it.
It's delicious. And now I just eat anything covered with Nutella, like banana chips with Nutella, apples with Nutella, pretzels with Nutella, anything really.
I agree completely.
Janyce, what about you?
Man, I don't know if it counts as like, yeah, it is. It's a snack. Chicken nuggets. Let me tell you.
I knew it. We knew it. We knew it was coming, Christian.
I was expecting chicken fries. That's what I was ready.
Any
prepared
form of
for.
like fried chicken, but like I'm thinking of something, fries, something on the go. Bring them back, Burger King. I don't know if they're still there. Those fries that like BK did.
Yeah, the chicken fries.
Yeah, those are great. But yeah, chicken nuggets. I can have those every day, all day.
Question: Dino shaped, or does it matter what shape it is?
It doesn't matter.
Dino shaped stars.
There's something about like those stars in dino shape though that like they were like, even when they were crispy, they still had like this nice soft. I know what I'm talking about. All right.
No one was judging you, Janyce. You just went 0 to 60 real fast on your own. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I love chicken nuggets.
I just can't wait for someone who's just listening to this to like not be able to see your passionate face. Like you talk about chicken nuggets the way like Viola Davis talks about acting. You know what I mean? Like it's very passionate.
That'll be a different episode, just dedicated.
Just chicken nuggets.
All the different forms of chicken.
Rating different kinds of chicken nuggets, the shapes, the textures, different fast food restaurants. I'm sure we'll do it.
Sacrifice. Yeah.
We'll talk about the sauces.
Whole other game there. Oh, okay, Josh, take it away.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about chicken nuggets.
My favorite snack ever growing up it has to be probably hands down hot Cheetos. Flamin' Hots. I remember I got memories growing up. I was probably like 5 years old, 4 years old, way too young to be eating any of that crap and putting it in my body. But my sister and I would walk home from my school. That was only like a couple blocks away. She would walk with me. And there was a JJ Peppers between my house and the school. It's a 7-Eleven now, so it's still kind of there, but there used to be a JJ Peppers. And every day after school, walking home, we would always make a slight detour right into that JJ Peppers parking lot, open up the door, grab a small bag of hot Cheetos, and I got addicted, and I've been addicted ever since, and I'm okay with it.
I agree. And
that's like back in the day when you could get 4 bags of small chips for like $1.
I'm not a huge fan of the cheese ones. However, not really. Like fudge cheese is fine for me. I prefer the limon con sal. You know what I'm saying? I would prefer to take a bag of hot Cheetos,
Those are really
get a
good. Yeah.
lime, put some lime in there, squeeze that, and then throw a little salt and eat that. Shake it up.
Yeah.
That's how I prefer it.
Aggressive.
Cheese isn't bad. It's not my preferred one. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing.
But of course, but of course. And
I
now
have
we're
to
gonna
really
move on.
say right
Oh,
before we transition, I just have to
sure.
say like that is like some Chicago, like you grew up in a hood thing.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you would go
Mhm.
into a place, get you some hot Cheetos, you know what I mean? Like
Love it.
sometimes you'd ask them to put cheese on it, especially if you don't have nothing to do for the
That
rest of the day,
nacho
because you're probably gonna
cheese.
have your stomach's probably gonna hurt in an hour.
Oh,
But like, you
definitely.
know what I mean? Like that was the move. That was the move.
I heard someone on a recent video that I was watching on YouTube call them spicy Cheetos, and I was
Oh
like,
no.
oh, I was like, everything about that is wrong. It's not spicy. I mean, technically, sure, but it's hot
That's
Cheetos.
like
It's
the
flaming hot.
government name.
Oh, I don't
Right.
like
I
it.
have a friend who now lives in Chicago, but is from Pittsburgh, and she had the same thing. She was like, "What are hot chips?" Like she didn't know that that was just like the name of it, hot chips.
We're gonna move on to our next segment, which is a little game that we're gonna play just to
Yeah.
get to know each other a little bit better. Of course, this is our first podcast, so we want to dive in deep, you know. And so we're gonna play a little game of Would You Rather. Sound effects, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But we'll
Was
add
it
it in
sound effects
post.
lights? Yeah. Janyce and I both have prepared just a couple of different would you rather scenarios, and the other members of the podcast are just going to try to answer as best you can. So I'll start with my first scenario for both of you. Would you rather be moderately successful for the rest of your life, but never achieve your dreams? So you're fine. You're like fine. You're good
Yeah.
for your whole life, but you never achieve your big dreams,
hmm
or have to live forever with a partner that laughed like Janice from Friends. They're in your
That's
life
funny.
forever. You are like
That's really
Good
funny.
one,
contracted with
Josh.
them forever.
Forever.
I feel
Yeah.
like both of these are losing situations. These are
I
definitely
know,
two losing
man.
situations.
The
Just
guest
imagine
has to
that.
go first.
Dang it, Janyce. Okay, I will.
Making up that rule. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Or I never. You know what? I could do the Janice thing. Now it's actually super easy. Yeah, I would. I can't have a terrible job and not because it sounds like if I take the terrible job. Yeah. Janice.
It's
Janice,
not a
Janice.
terrible job. It's a moderate job.
Yeah, but
You
there's
know,
no
like
dreams in it. So I
yeah.
would be so depressed. So I want
Yeah.
to keep my dreams. Yeah.
Okay.
That
Okay.
makes sense. But I could just picture myself like, man, if you're able to like, support yourself and like be happy in a moderate job, I think that sounds fine rather than like hearing that laugh every day. Um,
And night in your dreams
oh,
forever.
oh my gosh. You know what? I'll go with the laugh. I'll go with the laugh.
You know what I think about this one really quickly? It's kind of like I always think about what kind of kids I'm gonna have. And like sometimes I think about the fact that like what if one of my kids has an annoying voice or just like an annoying thing about them?
Mhm.
So like I just feel like this is that question. You know, you
I
can't
mean,
get rid of your kid. Like
I
if
think
your kid has an annoying voice or an
Right.
annoying laugh, you're just like
You
you're in it.
accept it. Right.
Yeah. You get used
no.
to it.
Maybe we can work on it. Maybe we can like, fix up that laugh. We'll work on it.
For sure. Conditioning from a child. No, I'm kidding. That's terrible. Don't do that. But what was I saying? I was gonna say I think I would probably also have to pick the partner who with the Janice laugh because I'm ambitious. I like there's stuff I want to achieve, and if I can't do that, then what's the point? Of like
Mhm.
this life. You know what I mean? So I'd
Mhm.
probably go that way.
I feel that.
Mhm.
All right. Mine is theater related. Boo.
No, please
So
do.
if you had to watch, if you had to watch plays by one white playwright,
Oh jeez.
white, what playwright would you choose? Like, who's your person?
Easy. Wait, is this a would you rather, or is this just a question that we're?
This is just
that
a
we're shooting?
question now. I was
Okay.
gonna wait. Actually, if you don't have the answer, I do have two that I could pose.
I have my answer right out the gate.
Go.
Shakespeare, baby, come on now.
Oh, that's right.
What are you
Boo. I
talking
should have taken
about?
that out.
What do you mean, boo? He's the one and
Because it's too
only, not the one and
easy.
only, but he's. I mean, I I have a love of Shakespeare. Janyce, I know you have a love of Shakespeare. Like that's something that's been near and dear to my heart. I think that the verse and the prose and the words of the great bard speak to a lot of souls and are just, they're classics. And so,
Yeah.
of course, if I had to pick one white playwright
Right.
to do forever, it'd be Shakespeare. Also,
Right.
like, come on, so many different shows that you could do. So
Yeah,
many
no,
different
that makes
varieties.
sense. I should have definitely like taken him out of the running, but I get it.
I want a would you rather. I want an either
Okay.
or.
So I
'Cause
was
I
thinking
know
of
I'm not
like,
going to choose Shakespeare.
yeah. I was thinking of like typical, like, who are the white men that we learn about in like acting one.
So
So
many.
I know, right? Everybody. Between Arthur
I've been
Miller
saying some stuff about
or
that.
Tennessee
Okay.
Williams, if you only had to watch their plays, who would you choose?
Tennessee Williams.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, no.
absolutely do not like Arthur Miller. So, and we can
Does
fight
he?
about it sometime, but I just think that, yeah, he's not my guy. He's not my guy. Like, so Tennessee Williams,
it.
hands down.
I would have to hop on that as well. Just follow it along. I think
agree.
for me personally, just style wise, that fits for
Mhm.
what I like. Cool. All right. All right. Well, thank you. Johnny, wait, what about you, Johnny's Arthur Miller or Tennessee Williams?
Oh, yeah, Tennessee Williams. I
Mm.
live for the drama. Give
Ah.
me some Southern accents any day.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Cool. So moving on, Chris, thank you so much for letting us to get to know you more, letting folks who see this
Yeah.
get to know you a little bit better. I do want to like let folks know that this is not the last that we will see of Christian. He will be coming on, I'm sure, in the future. But we just want to talk to you a little bit about our topic today, which is starting and then beginning things, and what does that look like. I know that we can kind of talk to you about a lot of topics, but we wanted to talk to you about this specifically because of Counter Collective. And if you want to talk to us a little bit more about what Counter Collective is, and first, how did that idea come about? What was the impetus for it starting?
And just for reference, again, we are all members of Counter Collective.
Right.
Mhm.
We are all ensemble members, and this podcast itself, the Sauce, is kind of a offshoot, a sprout of Counter Collective, part of that programming. But just want to put that out there for anyone who's questioning what it is in the first place. But Christian, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. So Counter Collective started from honestly, it's someone just approached myself and Bianca Corral, who is a Counter Collective ensemble member as well, and said, like, would you all be interested in starting some sort of group, some sort of theater group, etc. So before that, a few months before that, a lot of alumni had gotten together for an event that was led by another alum, Taylor Talhame, who is a really good friend of mine. And she had led that event, right? But afterwards, a lot of the alum were still kind of feeling like, I want to do a little bit more than just like this one-off thing.
Mm-hmm.
So then a teacher at Shy Arts, who is also a mentor of the company, Scott Westerman, was, approached Bianca and I, asked us would we be interested. And that's kind of where the idea came from, of just even having something. As time went on, it is when things started to evolve, right? Like, I think that Scott, Bianca, and I had a lot of ideas and a lot of dreams and hopes, but it really started to take form once we opened it up, right? And once, for instance, you, Janyce, and Josh, joined, and a lot of other alums joined, and then we started to see exactly what we were passionate about. And I think that that's the important thing about a lot of companies at the beginning, is asking what are they passionate about? What are the people that are there passionate about? And then asking the question, are other people passionate about this? Is this something that people will want to connect with us about, right? Or is it just our own passion, And what came out really quickly, I want to say in our first meeting, kind of just getting a whole bunch of alum in the same room, was that we were all really passionate about uplifting POC and minority voices. Like, that was across the board what we were all looking for. We had a lot of different ideas of how to get there, but that was the core thing that we all believed in. And so that is really where Counter Collective started. And it's just been, I mean, you guys have been there for, it's a trial and error process. It's like, it really
how
is
long
like
has
being
it
in a
been?
test kitchen. It's been now, I want to say 2.5, maybe 3 years. I think we're at probably 3 years at this point, And I think that, it's kind of hard to say 3 years because at the same time, those first 2 years were so much planning, and so much trying to get things off of the ground. And this podcast, The Sauce, is a really, really great example of exactly what we were looking at, which is getting things up and moving and off the ground. So, yeah.
What would you say is, I know there are many things that you can, say are the most difficult parts of starting this company. What are like the top two you think that have been the most hindering or roadblocks in this beginning process?
Money has been the number one. I wish there was more of it. And on top of that, I wish that there was an ability to, I wish there were more opportunities for startup companies to get funding. A lot of people want to see what you've been doing for the last 5 years, and that comes into conflict with what Counter Collective is. And one of our goals is to make sure that we're paying artists, right? So it's hard to consistently just ask people to do things for free, what I mean? And them also say like, hey, aren't you guys trying to pay us? You know what I mean? So I think that's number one. The second thing is making sure that it was fair for everybody and making sure that everyone's voices are heard consistently. Is always just a juggling act, right? And I've met with some other like artistic leaders and asked them like, hey, like, how do you do that? And like everybody says it's hard because you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you're juggling a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different voices. And sometimes you have to, you have to make some concessions about who in a specific moment you can focus on, right? And that's always really hard, but those are the two biggest, I would say.
For sure, that makes sense.
Hey, Christian, can you, kind of going off of that last point in that question, what would you say then is like one of the most proudest moments of having started Counter Collective? Was there a production? Was there like one thing that you sat down and was like, we did that? Wow.
I would say when we did 21 Chump Street, which you both were in. For those of you listening, Josh was our lead, and Janyce and Josh were our leads. I will say I look back at that and I'm just really proud of how much work was put into that and the payout from it and everything. And also just happy that I was able to involve the entire ensemble and that people got paid, right? Like those two things make me happy. So that's one of my proudest, but that's just one. I think I've had so many moments. Like honestly, sitting here recording this podcast with you all is one of my proudest moments. You know what I mean? To see that we've gotten to this place, right? Like that really, really makes me happy. And there's been a lot. So yeah.
The power of the sauce.
Yeah.
The flavor.
I love it.
Sazon.
Sazon.
Christian, just because I don't think we've like really made it clear for folks who are just learning about what Counter Collective is, if you can give like a brief summary of like what is the company and what are the goals and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so Counter Collective, we're always trying to answer the question, what is important to minority and underheard voices, right? So, and what does it, and our big question always is, what does it mean to be part of the counter culture, right? And part of the non-dominant culture, which is white, you know what I mean? And straight and cisgender, and all of those things, right? So that's always the question that we're looking towards and programming things that feed back into that question and are challenging it from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. So that's really why Counter Collective, or that's what leads Counter Collective. why Counter Collective exists is to amplify those counter culture voices, is to bring conversations to the table that affect us, but we never get to talk about them, right? Because the thing is, like, something that I realized this summer really quickly is, like, you know, I was at a protest and I was like, man, we are having these conversations about big things within the Black community, right? Like police brutality, and, you know, racism within education, right? These are big things, but we haven't even started to trickle down to the smaller things, right? Like the one-on-one interactions that are problematic, the things that might affect us that are microaggressions, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm hoping Counter Collective can do. Not just talk about
Cool.
the really big ideas around race, racism, gender, and sexuality, and things like that, but also talk about the smaller instances that are specific to certain people, right? For instance, we all three of us are people of color in Chicago, which is a very progressive place to live. You know what I mean? Like it's like 95% Democrat, you know what I mean? And we're in those types of areas, you know, where everybody's like kumbaya, things should go well. But like, what if all three of us were in the South, you know, in a town where racism, you know, was phased out just recently, you know, within the last couple decades. It would change our perspective. Yeah, phased out. Basically, we took the signs down. You know what I mean? So, so what would that mean for us? You know, and I think about that Black person, right? Like my experience as a Black man is different from that person's, right? Because they've experienced things that I've never thought of. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Christian. I love that. But jumping onto that, you've answered kind of why is Counter Collective. So, and what is leading it and driving it? How is Counter Collective answering those questions? How is it seeking to start those conversations? Like, if you were to give a one sentence description of Counter Collective as a company, not necessarily our mission, but more so the company, what would you say? How would you describe it?
Ooh.
What do those folks do?
Yeah. What do we do? Who are we?
My one sentence would be, we are here to be in conversation with any structure that seeks to belittle us and marginalize us. That is what our art is here to be in conversation. And specifically, I use the word conversation because it's, like I said, viewpoints are viewpoints, right? And people's viewpoints and how they accept it is going to be different every time. So yeah, that's my one sentence. We're here to be in conversations with systems of oppression and to challenge them. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, we're I love that. We're a group of artists who are trying to lead these conversations, right, in these spaces. So a question for you then, where is Counter Collective now? Like, and I think we can all probably talk a little bit about this, but where do you see Counter Collective going, Christian? Like, what is a big goal that you have? What is something that you want to accomplish in the Chicagoland area through this company, through the founding of this? What is the eventual, like, what's the dream Counter Collective organization look like to you?
Yeah. So in my big 10-year dream, 10 years, but you know, it might take longer than 10 years, but in my big 10-year dream, you know, or where I would love to see us go, is I would love to see Counter Collective as a company that exists within minority communities, that we might have one brick and mortar building, you know, but we definitely have satellite offices on the south and west sides, right? And that instead of waiting for a predominantly white company to go into those schools, you know, for 2 months or whatever it is, you know, we're there consistently. And we're there showing students that people that look just like them, people that come from the same places, have a future in the arts. And I think that sometimes is the barrier, right? For someone, it's like, I don't I don't necessarily see myself there. I might have a passion for something, but I don't see myself there. You know, I don't see myself doing it every day. And I think that there's a lot of power in that representation of us just being there. And not saying that we're trying to make artists, but and my goal would be that art is accessible to everybody, and they can come in and they can see it and they can be a part of it and they can contribute to it in whatever way makes them feel comfortable. So that's my big goal. And I know it's not like it's not super tangible, you know, like I said, yes, I would love for us to have a brick and mortar building one day, but past that, I think the mission of the company is more important than us having, you know, a beautiful counter collective center, you know, that's 4 blocks long. It's more important for me to say, you know,
That'd be something.
that would be
Jeez,
something, right? It's more important for me to say we're in that community and in that community and that community and that community. So
Yeah. That's awesome. And I like how you also just like make it kind of general in the way they see art, because although I think 3 of us have in common that we are theater artists, I think that Counter Collective also represents all other art forms as well. So folks can expect to not only see theater productions, hopefully one day, but also supporting musicians and visual artists and writers and all of that good stuff as well. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it continues to go and how it grows. Yeah, especially with everything, you know, looking a lot different for the arts right now. But I think that this company definitely has a lot of beautiful potential.
Yeah, I love to see. I mean, coming as, like I said, a person who is interested in a bunch of art and also as an educator, I don't think I mentioned that earlier, right? The fact that all of us teach at some capacity,
Really do.
or have taught at some capacity, or are currently teaching in like different roles. I've taught both in an academic classroom and in a artistic classroom as well, in both settings. And I do have a passion for teaching and educating, and that's why, Christian, like what you're saying, I am so excited for some kind of program like that to be a part of it and to work with the youth of the city of Chicago in that area and foster those skills, foster that acceptance of, oh, you know, based on, it doesn't matter the fact that I feel different, I can still, there's a place for me at these places. And I think for me, at least, something that I definitely want to see in Counter Collective is not just those education like seminars or like working with students in the classroom, but something I have a real passion for with this, with Counter Collective, is giving a home to artists post college or post graduation from high school. Having a place and being a place where if you have just graduated and are a student of, or rather an artist of color, and don't have any idea where to go or how to start, right? That we could provide resources or be a place
Art.
that you can ask, right? And just get started. Yeah, it's exactly our whole thing. Oh, that's amazing. And get started and see where that goes. Finally, Janyce, I want to ask, what's something that you want to see out of Counter Collective? What's a dream that you want to see achieved by this company?
That's a good question. I think that you guys are both hitting like the nail on the head for me about just, I think accessibility is really important to me. Like I mentioned before, I grew up in Humboldt Park, which in my time, the Chicago public school that I went to had like no artistic resources. I had like my family's little dance group and I like sung in the church choir, but I had no idea what theater was and what possibilities that were for me until, you know, Shy Arts. I think it was a beautiful way of me being introduced to theater because it was a public school. It was free. You had all of these resources, great resources that we definitely took for granted, like working with all of these like professional artists
Absolutely, of course.
for free.
Everyone does.
Like that's
Yeah.
insane. So like if it wasn't for someone to have that vision of making those, you know, those spaces accessible, like I wouldn't be here, you know? So like I hope that like through Counter Collective, whether it's young people, whether it's current artists who are, you know, adults just trying to figure out their careers here in this city, I hope that like we just have this open space where folks can feel welcome to be creative, to create stories, to have fun, and then also, you know, not be afraid to dive into those necessary, important conversations. Yeah, that's what I envision, to kind of be like a little safe haven for company members, audience members, and anyone else who finds themselves connected to us.
One thing I want to say to backpack off of that, is that about Shy Arts, right? Like, and this is not a paid, we're not getting paid
We'll bleep
to
it out.
promote
I'll
Shy
bleep it.
Arts, but
Yeah.
no, we won't bleep it out. Mr. Ochoa will listen to this. The
Hi,
thing about
Jose.
it is that Shy Arts was so important to us because none of us had ever had art feel that accessible, at least a nice amount of students that started, right? Had never felt as though it could be that close, right? And there was this huge barrier, right, for a lot of students as far as even just seeing their first theater production or seeing their first dance show or hearing their first opera. All of those things are huge, right? And as we know, everyone that graduates from Shy Arts does not go on to be an artist, but it's that exposure and it's the skill set
Mhm.
of working with people, the skill set of seeing a project from beginning to end. All of those things are important regardless of the job that you take on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, going off of that, as a high schooler who also went to Shy Arts, right? Like, I had seen theater productions before from like local schools or like my school. Really, I didn't really go out and see ballet or opera or anything like that for the most part. I was involved in band in high school, so I'd seen like small local concerts. But I remember going to Shy Arts and having a field trip to go see Memphis on Broadway in Chicago. That was my first Broadway in Chicago
Yeah.
show I'd ever seen. And being able to see people of color on a stage, being
Yeah.
powerful, packed house, everyone standing at the end of the show and just kind of like
Mhm.
seeing this beautiful piece of art performed in front of them to such a level, to such a high standard and degree of excellence was to me awe-inspiring, right? And that's, I think, something that Shy Arts, at least if we're singing praises of that program right now, at least, right? Something that was deeply affecting to me was then being able to see that and then see the potential in myself and seeing shows like In the Heights, which is my favorite show ever, right? But seeing myself reflected in that and like having dreams then of pursuing and making art like that, which wasn't something tangible, I think, for me in the beginning.
Right.
I knew that there were, Latinx actors out there, but to see something live and live performance in theater in Chicago right in front of me that was so accessible,
Yeah.
and learning that at Shy Arts we were kind of building the connections to get
Mhm.
there was something that I think definitely drove me to be a little more serious about my craft while I
Yeah.
was there.
Yeah. That's so special.
And can I say something really quickly? I think that the I
No,
keep being like,
no,
can I
this
say
is
something
our
really
show.
quickly?
You're done.
I think that it's the possibilities. And I think that everybody should feel as though they have possibilities. And I think
Yeah.
that people of color have not felt that way.
Right.
That everything that you're interested in, you can go get. And I think that that's important. I think that it's important to start that relationship with people of color, just as one group, right? I'm not even getting to other minority groups, right? Like we're
Yeah,
just talking about people
exactly.
of color just need to feel as though I can go be whatever I want to be, right?
Yes.
Regardless of if it's art or being a doctor, I can do it. And I think that that's what I really want to see everybody feel is like, I can do this, So.
hmm I love it.
Absolutely.
Kind
Yeah.
of just to, because this is making me so inspired, to like wrap up this conversation about counter collective and like beginning something, Chris. Like, what is it that like inspires you to keep on going? Because the beginning, starting something, I feel like can be the toughest thing for most folks. So for people who might have a project that they haven't started yet, and are scared to face those difficult times, what motivates you to keep on going when you have this dream project that's still trying to get off the ground?
Yeah, I think
It's a big question.
Yeah, it is.
because I'm also thinking to myself, like, let's not lie to the audience, right? Like, I'm not perfect, in any way, shape, or form, right? I still have
What?
projects that are on my computer that I'm like, it would be nice if you finish that at some point.
Yeah.
But I will say that what drives me is a bigger purpose for everything, right? So Counter Collective and working on it consistently these last couple years the idea, not the idea, but the goal that Counter Collective can be something in people's communities and have change, right, has driven me when I'm feeling like, "Oh, you know what, whatever, you know what I mean, has
Mhm.
driven me because I'm thinking, okay, no, there's something bigger, right? There's something bigger that you're going towards. So I think that's what always drives me. When it comes to personal projects, oh gosh, okay.
Different story.
Oh,
It's
I
a
feel
different
you. I
story.
feel
It
you.
really has to, I really have to push myself. I have
Yeah.
to push myself, and I have to remind myself to set aside the time the same way that I would set aside time for someone else, right? And that's the thing is
I
like
like that.
if someone emails you and is like, "Will you do this reading of The Tempest?" right? You're going to set aside time for it. And I think that you have to take your own personal projects the same way, right? Like
I'm
at
Seriously.
stealing
1
that.
o'clock, right? I'm not
Write it
scheduling
down.
any meetings. I'm not doing anything. From 1 to 2 p.m., I'm a write. Like I'm gonna sit my butt down and I'm a write,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. But it's easier said than done.
Oh yeah.
But it's the goal.
Right. No, that's great advice.
I love that. I was gonna ask, what's one thing that you do to at least stay on top of that? And I think that that's a great piece of advice. I was joking, but I legitimately probably am gonna steal some of that from myself because I think everyone can relate to having 10 different personal projects or things that they want to get started, even though they haven't finished this one thing. But I need to rest from that one thing. So maybe I'll start this other thing in order to rejuvenate myself to go back to that other thing. And we just keep going and adding on and on and on and on. And I think
Mhm.
that idea of just marking for yourself and just saying, no, this is your time, pen it in. It's in pen. That's ink, not pencil, right? Can't erase it.
Mhm.
Like this is time that you need to dedicate to that. And so I love that. I love that piece of advice. So
This is
thank you for
my
that, Christian.
active growth time, right?
Mm,
Like active
hmm.
growth. Like this is my
Yes.
growth
I like
time.
that. Active growth.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap up every episode with this little segment called "What's the Word?"
What's the word?
Hey,
I'm
I
gonna
need
do
we
that.
need to just like have that clip of you
What's
saying
the
that
word?
and just
Yeah.
like drop it in every time.
Hmm.
So how it will work is that we'll have a word or a phrase that is somehow connected to our topic, and then we'll have our guest artist and me and Josh will jump in as well to kind of give your insight on whether you agree with the term, why or why not. Yeah, we can just kind of talk about it. So for today, our word of the day is self-starter. How do you feel about that term, Christian? Do you think that that can you actually be a self-starter? What does that look like? Is there any like validity in that phrase to your life? What are your thoughts?
And I think also speaking on that, adding to that, like in our cultures too, right? As
Mhm.
minorities, like
Yes,
what does that also
that's a
mean
great point.
in
Yeah.
terms of our cultures?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Ooh. You know, it takes so many different forms, right? Like being a self-starter, you're oh wow. Okay, so here I'll start with artistically. Artistically, self-starter for me is so funny because self-starter for what? You know what I
Right.
mean? Like self-starter means is self-starter always sounds like to me that without any inspiration, you'd be gone. And I don't think that's always it, right? Sometimes there is value in rest and not starting and pausing and stopping. So I think that if I can really let's see if I can really articulate self-starter. For me, self-starting is organizing my time and deciding what time I'm going to do, like what I said, that active growth, right? What time I'm going to do counter collective growth and work on stuff here, and what time I'm going to put aside for working. And then after I do to make money. And after all that, then I
Right.
say, okay, where's my time where I get to smoke weed and do yoga, you know what I mean? And hang out
Yeah.
with my friends. So yeah,
Mhm.
maybe the self-starting starts before you actually do a task. The self-starting, I guess, starts when you decide to actively put time for yourself and work. So
Mhm.
Oh man, I think that Christian took it or in a different way than I did. I think that it's really cool that like you think of it as, the way that someone actually, begins the work, a self-starter. Um I think that I look at that phrase kind of a little bit more negative. It's
That's cool.
Yeah, let's
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
it. Let's
And
talk
like,
about it.
yeah, I think that like I think like self for some reason is maybe what's like rubbing me the wrong way. It's like in order to be productive, in order to be successful, you have to do it on your own. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
that like, and I think as artists, like that's like super like nails into our mentality of like you need to like do it all on your own and figure it out. And if you're not where you're at, then like you're just not working hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's like where that went. And then you started, brought up cultures, and that makes me think of how like Black and brown folks have always been blamed for not working hard enough and not being that self-starter. But then really like where is the starting line for all of these different folks that makes it, so that it's
Mm,
easier for them to
come on,
reach
sis.
those goals. Yeah, so that's
Because
where
our
my
starting line for so as minorities sometimes is wherever white people put it.
right.
Right. So your starting line might be, a totally different place than mine because, the white people involved might like you more than they like me. And that's hard. So
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
I was hopping off of what Janyce said real quick. I was going to say that I think that term, I see it as like veiled in a way, because I think growing up and in my community, specifically the Latinx community, right, in Chicago, at least with my family and with, my family's friends and everyone, a lot of immigrant family, like people that have moved here for work or any of that kind of stuff. I think it's been veiled as a positive thing for a very long time. At least
Yeah.
I saw it as a positive thing. Not
Yeah.
that it doesn't have its positives, but veiled as this idea that, oh, well, yeah, I'm the person who picked myself up from the bootstraps. I earned all of this. I earned all of that. This is mine. This is,
Right.
from my legacy, blah, 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 blah. And now looking back at almost kind of the, not the toxicity of it. I mean, I think that there's some toxicity there in terms of pride and building self-pride. Not that there's wrong with being proud of your work or what you've accomplished,
Mhm.
but then the idea of looking down on others, right? And I think it's the same thing between, you know um white folks saying, hey, you guys should be self-starters, and us being like, okay, well, where's the line? But at the same time, I think within our communities as well, there's also, right, the people that I know, plenty of arguments that have started with, well, I've been successful, look at where I've been. Those people can do the exact same thing if they just tried hard enough, right? I'm a Latino who worked my way up, and I own a business and I own a house and I have this family. Why can't those people also do that? They're
Mhm.
just being lazy, right? And that's an argument that I hear a lot of the time that I think is veiled in that idea of being a self-starter and
Right.
people being proud of their accomplishments, which is great. And
Yeah,
you
it's
should be
great.
proud of your accomplishments.
Mhm.
But when you use that to kind of deny the oppression or just the circumstances that other people have been into and deny help
Mhm.
or assistance to some of those people, I think is where things get turned around. And I think that that's where it turns toxic.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Well, we just want to say thank you so much to all of you guys who are
Yeah.
watching this podcast.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about Counter Collective and see future episodes of this podcast, we'll be talking about a bunch of different topics. The next topic that we'll be talking about is going to be about finding motivation for working projects during a pandemic, specifically what this whole year has been like for working artists in
Mhm.
Chicago and around the world, kind of in that sense. So look forward to that. If you want to go ahead and find out more about that, feel free to follow Counter Collective on Instagram. We have a Facebook page, so feel free to like us there.
Yes.
And yeah, so thank you guys so much.
Thank you. And hopefully in the future
Bye.
you'll find us being safely in the same room.
Yes, yes. And thank you, Christian, so much for joining us, for being our guest. You've been a wonderful guest, and we'll see you again, obviously, in the future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks you guys for having me. I
Yeah.
loved it.
So for our closing statement, don't forget to invite everyone to the table.
And pass the sauce.
Bye.